transporting America's veterans to visit the memorials dedicated to their service and sacrifice. That is the mission of Honor Flight Nevada, helping every veteran willing and able to get on a plane or a bus to visit their memorials. In October of 2012, 2 News traveled with Honor Flight Nevada on its inaugural trip to Washington, D.C., and we proudly supported the cause every step of the way. In early December of 2021, a special group of Honor Flight Nevada veterans left on a trip from Reno to the island of Oahu, Hawaii. A team of 2 with 2 News traveled along to document the journey. KTVN 2 News is honored to present Mission Pearl Harbor.
A hero's welcome. Aloha style.
I need all the energy.
From Hawaiian flower lays to enthusiastic cheers by masked greeters, the vets traveling with Honor Flight Nevada are welcomed to Honolulu with open arms. Of this group of veterans, 4 are World War II survivors. These men were invited to commemorate the 80th anniversary of one of the most pivotal moments in U.S. history, the bombing of Pearl Harbor. That ceremony was the very next day, the first full day of the group's visit to the island. Just before 8 a.m. on December 7th, 2021, the music begins at the same time the bombs began to drop on this U.S. naval base 80 years ago. The solemn ceremony for National Pearl Harbor Remembrance Day happens just across the bay from the USS Arizona Memorial. The Honor Flight Nevada veterans in attendance were just young teenagers the day the news broke of the attack, December 7th, 1941.
Scared?
Stunned.
In fact, I was delivered newspapers, and it was the front page.
December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy.
The very next day, before a joint session of Congress, President Franklin D. Roosevelt declared war.
We will not only defend ourselves to the uttermost, but will make it very certain that this form of treachery shall never again endanger us.
After that day, the United States was united like never before.
Oh, I wanted to go in right away.
I wanted to go to the service right away, you know.
And I wanted to get in, but my dad wouldn't let me, wouldn't sign for me until I graduated from high school.
Just turned 17, I thought I'm going to join.
I was in the Marine Corps 2 weeks after I got out of high school.
At the Pearl Harbor Remembrance Day ceremony, guest speakers included a Hawaiian elder, National Park Service dignitaries, and the Secretary of the Navy, all addressing hundreds of invitees. Some 30 in attendance were right here the day the bombs dropped.
First bomb that fell on Ford Island fell about 100 yards from me on a hangar next to ours.
The USS Arizona was the hardest hit. More than 1,000 souls still remain buried on the USS Arizona. More than 2,000 lives were lost when Japan attacked the U.S. Pearl Harbor 80 years ago. Many survived. One of them is Jack Holder.
I had the duty that day. My section just fell in. I was in our hangar. We just fell in for muster. Section leader began roll call. We heard a scream in the aircraft. Moments later, a terrible explosion.
The ceremony commemorating 80 years since that attack brought back memories, even for those who were not in Pearl Harbor that day.
Because I only came here one time in the service. I was here about 2 weeks. Our ship pulled in.
Oh, it's a great honor. It is. I couldn't wait to get here.
Honor Flight Nevada's James Golding came in tribute to 2 friends he lost during World War II.
One Eddie Trotman, who was in the Bataan Death March, and my friend Rolly Wilson, who died here.
Golding says it's about paying our respects and
to say that we will never forget.
the day's ceremony took about 1 hour. The attack on Pearl Harbor was over in less than 2. The sacrifices made and the valor shown that morning will always be remembered. A trip to Hawaii for Pearl Harbor remembrance is not complete without a visit to the USS Arizona Memorial. All of the Honor Flight Nevada veterans were honorably welcomed aboard for the ride to the memorial structure. From salutes and handshakes to horn blows and a few words of gratitude from actor John Seda, who portrayed a World War II Medal of Honor recipient in a miniseries called The Pacific.
Something that I'm truly thankful for the rest of my life to have been a part of. But at the end of the day, the most important thing is all of you. And I'm truly thankful from the bottom of my heart for all of you.
The ferry ride to the USS Arizona Memorial is a short one, with just enough time for quiet introspection about what's to come. It is a sight to behold, a 184-foot-long structure that spans, yet never touches, the mid-portion of the USS Arizona, the battleship that still lies where she sank 80 years ago.
Being stretched over the wreckage itself, so the attack on Pearl Harbor represents those values being challenged, those values being stretched.
Here is the actual bombing of the mighty USS Arizona.
The Empire of Japan executed a surprise attack on the U.S. On that day, 2,403 American lives were lost. Almost half were aboard the USS Arizona.
The war was won. The war was won because of what you all did, and that's why we're glad to have you here. That's why we're honored to have you here as the greatest generation.
Past the halfway point of the memorial, there is an opening in the floor overlooking the Arizona's sunken deck. Here, our Honor Flight veterans pay their respects, tossing flowers in honor of their fallen brothers in arms. All veterans and all guests are drawn to this solemn sight of the still sunken battleship, still leaking oil, often referred to as the Black Tears of the USS Arizona. The back section of the memorial is called the Shrine Room. Here, a marble wall is etched with the names of the 1,177 sailors and Marines who died on the USS Arizona during the attack on Pearl Harbor. It is believed that 900 people were entombed on the Arizona when it sunk on that fateful day. A total of 334 crew members survived the bombardment of the USS Arizona. 44 of them chose to be interred on the USS Arizona upon their death, many expressing a desire to join old friends who never made it off the warship. A realization that leaves even the most stoic of veterans in awed silence. As the Honor Flight veterans finished their visit to the USS Arizona Memorial, another day sets in Honolulu. It has been said that World War II was fought and won in the air. Aircraft of all shapes and sizes played a vital role in the war. And it was the air raid on Pearl Harbor that would catapult the U.S. into the global conflict. The Ford Island Control Tower stood witness that day and still stands in silent guard to this day. It is part of the Pearl Harbor Aviation Museum, where our Honor Flight Nevada veterans were once again given a warm Hawaiian welcome. Welcome. And provided guided tours.
We have 3 docents to get you started here.
With the guides explaining every display, the vets got to take in all the Pearl Harbor Aviation Museum houses, relics from the attack on December 7, 1941, and the many battles in the Pacific that would follow.
Out of 80 of them, 73 came home.
Authentic artifacts, some standing proudly, others salvaged in pieces. The museum displays everything from the P-40 Flying Tiger to the big bombers and the bombs they dropped, plus the smaller aircraft that were equally vital.
Used for observation, locating Japanese targets.
A proud U.S. Marine, Bob Schwartz, who is 96 years old, remembers his experience flying L-4 liaison aircraft with precise clarity.
If we spotted something we thought was a target, we'd go up to about 3,000 feet and put the engine on idle and then dive down to see the target and observe it and see that it was actually a target. And then we'd hit the engine and get out of there, and then we'd radio in where the target was located.
Many of Honor Flight Nevada's World War II vets now sit in wheelchairs instead of cockpits. And the visit to the Aviation Museum brought all the memories right back.
I saw them loading the Enola Gay.
The Enola Gay, a Boeing B-29 Super Fortress bomber, was the plane that dropped the atomic bomb on the city of Hiroshima, Japan.
But I didn't know what they were doing. It was top secret.
Schwartz says he enlisted shortly after his 17th birthday and went on to have months of specialty schooling.
Parachute jumps and chemical warfare and jungle training.
He also learned to fly, specifically a light aircraft, 2-seater L-4.
All of us did. It was an easy aircraft to fly. We could land it at like 35 miles an hour, and we could land it at an airfield. We could land and take off from an aircraft carrier if we had to, but most of the time we landed on the beach.
There are more than 50 aircraft at the Pacific Aviation Museum, some Japanese, some American, all recalling the attack on Pearl Harbor and the war that followed. A war the U.S. won, thanks to the selfless efforts of all who served.
I was proud of it, and I still am.
Quietly standing watch over the solemn grounds, the statue known as Lady Columbia is said to represent all grieving mothers. For here, more than 53,000 people are interred, veterans from World War I to the Vietnam War. The National Memorial Cemetery of the Pacific on the island of Oahu, Hawaii, is affectionately known as the Punchbowl. It is dramatic, beautiful, and reverent all at once. On the lower lawn of the cemetery, Marine and Korean War veteran Ken Santor joined other Honor Flight vets and some very dear family friends for a special moment. Many years ago, Mr. Santor and a group of fellow Korean War vets met in Hawaii for a reunion. At the National Memorial Cemetery of the Pacific, they were told about Section U.
Well, we knew nothing about Section U. So we came here, and there was 835 graves with a little stone that said, Korea, unknown.
Ken returned from his 4 years of service with a Purple Heart for being wounded in combat, and some battle scars which remain on his heart.
Mostly it hit us because we had all these souls that were unknown.
Santor and a few others decided to create a customized marble tablet to be placed at Section U.
We brought it over for the first Memorial Day, which was 25 to 30 years ago.
To this day, Ken sends flowers and money in support every year, and a close friend in Hawaii, along with his family, makes sure the tradition continues.
David's father did it. He passed on, and David is doing it, and little David III will probably end up doing it too. So we're real happy.
On the upper end of the Punchbowl, Santor joins the rest of the Honor Flight vets as they gather to take in the quiet splendor and pay their respects. Even in the most solemn of places, the burial grounds, there are moments of great camaraderie and memories.
Our first stop was in the Marshall Islands, Anahuac. From there to Leyte in the Philippines, and then we went from there to Okinawa.
Now 98 years old, John Glimmerveen served in the Navy on landing crafts. The Punchbowl's unique mosaic concrete maps brought him back to his time in the Pacific Theater.
Yeah, so we went over that whole area.
At this point in the trip, the Honor Flight veterans who began the journey as strangers are now practically family.
I'm going to back up so we can get the whole thing.
Now deeply connected by their past service and the shared present-day experience of visiting memorials dedicated in their honor.
Battleship Missouri, 53,000-ton flagship of Admiral Halsey's Third Fleet.
If the USS Arizona symbolizes when the United States entered World War II, it could be said the USS Missouri symbolizes when our nation helped bring the global conflict to its end.
Surrender had been signed aboard the ship, which makes it historic in itself.
These proceedings are closed.
The war in the Pacific was officially halted on September 2nd, 1945, when the U.S. accepted Japan's surrender on the deck of this Navy battleship, the USS Missouri.
There's just something about it that kind of gets your attention.
Honor Flight Nevada veteran Jack Delaney served on the USS Missouri for 2 years during the Korean War in the 1950s.
So nice to meet you. Thank you.
Now the warship sits in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii as a floating memorial, a museum ship. Honor Flight Nevada got a warm welcome aboard.
We're going to be with Bill right over there.
As group after group clamored to take photos with the heroes.
3, 2, 1.
And Jack Delaney, who admits the USS Missouri was his first love, got to go below deck once again. And there is a lot to take in, from the mess hall and kitchen
3 squares a day
to sleeping quarters with bunks and minuscule lockers.
Uniforms, socks, underclothes.
The USS Missouri was commissioned in 1944 and received 3 battle stars for her service in World War II.
It had a history already when I came aboard.
The USS Missouri is famously nicknamed the Mighty Mo, and mighty she was.
We got one round on us in Korea, and we answered with one round of the 16-inch guns, and that was the end of the noise. They just went to bed.
The Missouri received a total of 11 battle stars for service all the way through the war in the Persian Gulf. 5 were during the Korean War. For Jack Delaney, it was all in a day's work.
You did your regular duties every day, and then you had a watch every night. So you'd get 6 hours sleep one night, and the next night you'd get 4 hours sleep.
The Missouri's halls and walls are now filled with photographs and reminders of how life aboard used to be.
And each deck was laid out separately.
Officers' quarters restored to their former glory.
Rank has its privileges.
Some items left virtually unchanged, some modernized over time.
We used to have the green tables, and they used to collapse every evening. They'd swing the bunks from the overhead. The guys get in hammocks to sleep.
And even a shared keepsake from one serviceman to another.
If anybody wants to take that home and clean it up, give it to the grandkids, tell them clean it up.
It's a metal plug that holds the deck down, the wooden portion of the deck.
A piece that had been on the ship since the 1940s.
Sounds good.
All right. That's your
Thank
ship
you.
right there.
A part of the ship deck that back in 1952, Delaney may very well have walked over.
Good damn chance.
Mr. Delaney's sense of humor and good spirit carried him through 20 years of service in the Navy.
I fell in love with it.
And retired as Chief Petty Officer in the Hospital Medical Corps, with plenty of adventures along the way.
Gotten a few scrapes in my day, but it is what it is.
The USS Missouri was decommissioned in 1992 after serving a total of 17 years of active service. The battleship now sits in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii as a floating museum. As Mr. Delaney says, she belongs to the American people.